What does the top 20% of landscape operators look like in 2026?
Sometimes I think folks get focused on it's interesting, they get focused on revenue per truck. We tend to measure more on the revenue per employee.
What customer segments and geographies are you seeing really outperform?
The gentleman in Charlotte's in the right place. Tell him he shouldn't move.
Welcome to Ask Frank. We're in 15 minutes. We have an expert answer one of our audience members' questions. And today we're very lucky to be joined by Britt Wood, who is the CEO of the National Association of Landscape Professionals, the trade body that represents the entire US landscape industry, from solo operators all the way up to billion-dollar roll-ups. So, Britt, welcome to Ask Frank.
Thank you so much, Will. It's a pleasure to be here.
So today we've got a question out of Charlotte. We've got a gentleman who's running $1 million landscape business in Charlotte. He started with 1 truck. He's now at 4 trucks, and he's really got no idea how he's tracking. And so he wanted to know, what does the top 20% of landscape operators look like in 2026? Where's the industry growing? What should he be chasing right now?
So, if we just talk about, some of the key leading indicators, if you will, right? Some of the statistics that you can quickly utilize to measure where you're standing, right? Sometimes I think folks get focused on it's interesting, they get focused on revenue per truck. We tend to measure more on the revenue per employee. We feel like that's a better guidance of exactly where you are. And so if you look at your revenue per employee, the average for the $1 million operators around $134 of revenue per employee. We think it's a 156 statistic is good. And again, I would also encourage a smaller operator. This is part of the advantage of joining the association. We have a financial benchmark study, which we put together. He can get access to all of this data. I mean, we would say his gross margin needs to be, 48% or above. That means you're really performing at a solid pace. The higher performers are performing in the low to mid 50 per gross margin range. Your customer retention, if you're doing really well, should be about 90%. That's the high achievers. 80 to 90%, you're doing good, right? I don't want to discount that, because if this gentleman's saying, well, God,
Yes, I've got 70.
yeah. No. 80 to 90 is good, but we find our superior performers are 90%. And I think the other thing that I would encourage the individual, the gentleman from Charlotte to do is to think about what his mix is, finding his balance between his design build and his maintenance, right? Design build tends to be more profitable, better margins, but it's inconsistent in terms of your ability to fulfill, right? Especially as we look at some of the economic headwinds that are headed this way in the US. So I would say you want to find that balance that works for you and your business between doing maintenance, which is that regular recurring revenue, and doing your design build, which is kind of getting your big boosts in profits.
And I guess, which service lines are you guys seeing that are growing that kind of 10 to 20% around the country? What customer segments and geographies are you seeing really outperform?
The gentleman in Charlotte's in the right place.
Okay, fantastic. That's great.
He's in a very good place. The southeast portion of the United States is seeing the largest population surges, but let me be specific on that. We work with, just so you know, a lot of this information is supplied to us by a firm called ITR, which NALP partners with. They develop economic forecasts for us on a quarterly basis. So again, if you're in NALP, you're getting this for free. You can take a look at it. But basically, we're seeing that the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, really, really strong growth. Not far behind them is your Tennessee, right? So we're seeing good population, strong population growth for that. Clearly, there's an exodus from the north to the south in the United States. Out west, we see something similar in that Arizona, Utah, Nevada are really picking up steam in terms of continued population growth. Now, a lot of that is due to the expense of California actually shrinking in population growth. So, you factor in those things as you look at geographies. I think that's certainly something that's good. As we look ahead into the leading economic indicators, right? So we're seeing a sight of just general business overall is beginning to. We're going to see a softening in 27, but a rebound in 28. Right. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be growth, because there's definitely an opportunity for growth, but we expect a slowing growth in 27, but 28 coming back. And again, based on and what we measure, just so you know, when we look at the leading economic indicators for our industry, a lot of it's about housing starts, but it's also about non-residential starts in terms of building. We also look at the architecture index because if architects are designing, that means building will occur and we'll move forward from there. So we have a lot of these indicators that tell us why we feel comfortable about forecasting out that far in advance.
And so, like the Carolinas, these kind of booming areas that you've mentioned, these are mainly focused on new builds, or you're also seeing opportunities there in, segments like that maintenance, like the municipalities. Yeah, where
Yes. Yeah. So you'll see, again, as whether you're in the commercial or the residential side, right? There's that balance. Residential is going to be a little tougher unless you're doing enhancements or kind of improvement in terms of existing properties, because we don't see a lot of new properties being sold, right? We're going to see that slow down in the U.S. housing market. We've been seeing for a while. It's going to continue. Unfortunately, rates are going to stay where they are for a little while, and so we're not going to see that explosion of new housing. With that said, new development is coming, and in these areas that are experiencing this population surges, the infrastructure has to keep up. And part of a real opportunity for a lot of members is getting on board with some of those commercial projects as it relates, especially to municipalities, and the ability to do a lot of work that go along with those kind of infrastructure improvements. So think about parks and an enhancement of parks. Just think about open green spaces as it is, the opening of hospitals, other things like that. Well, those are great opportunities for individuals to get engaged and to really grow the business.
I guess that's a great segue, right? And I certainly experienced this, like when I had my landscaping business, but we focused very heavily on that recurring revenue. But then when it comes to trying to tackle something commercial or municipal, I guess, do you have any advice for actually how to get in the room and try and get in front of some of these opportunities?
Well, so it's interesting, because one of the things we always talk about, I think it's funny, especially here in the US, people sometimes shy away from it, and that's advocacy. But it is the ability just to simply get yourself involved in your community, right? By getting involved in your community, you're going to make connections. When you make connections, you're going to create opportunities. So it's people shy away from getting engaged in any kind of even local, right? Local government, except, and you have to, right? Because that's where you're going to meet people who have different interests. But it's going to open up a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities. So that the number one thing we encourage people to do is to get involved in your community. And what we find is those members who are actively involved get those opportunities. Those opportunities make their way to them because now they know where to go and where to look.
And would you say that, I guess, that sort of mentality and approach to getting business is what is differentiating, a premium tier landscaper from, someone who is kind of struggling to break in there, and that premium is able to then go and charge a little bit more for a lot of the work that they're doing because they do have those brand names behind them.
Yeah, I think that is helpful, but I will tell you when we talk about what some of the successful folks are doing differently, it boils down to a few really key opportunities, right? So it's how are you managing your labor, right? That's an absolute key, and we can go into more detail on that, but it's also understanding your pricing, right? And ensuring that you're being competitive, but not, sometimes the lowest bidder doesn't always really win. Sometimes it's about getting and understanding your pricing and understanding how you can be competitive and saying no to certain jobs. This industry is the one where there is still so much work to go around, right? You don't necessarily, if you miss out on a job, it may not lead to a sour economic time because there is so much out there. So understand who your customer should be. And that goes to pricing, right? You need to control your overhead and you need to really make sure you're utilizing your assets, right? So that's whether it's your human assets, but also, any of your equipment and your technology. And technology is kind of where I'd like to end as one of the things of saying, yeah, this is super important for the high performers. We see the high performers embracing technology, and that can take many different forms. It can go from embracing equipment technology to just simply embracing efficiencies in your software, and even to the matter of fact of getting more and more engaged in AI and better understanding how it can help your business.
So I work in the software industry as well, right? So that's a good thing to hear. But, outside of kind of, I guess we see labor as the growth ceiling, right? But your fastest growing members, what else are they doing differently? I mean, you've got the technology, absolutely, but are they bringing on more apprentices? Are they focusing more heavily on retention, kind of getting better utilization out of equipment? Like, are there any other things that you're seeing, any levers that people are pulling there?
Number one is employee retention. Number
Okay.
one, by far. If you can, retain your employees, a lot of your other headaches will go away. And so that we see that the successful folks are the ones that are really making a concerted effort to really retain their folks. They also need to have a strategy for continue to bringing new folks on board. You see some interesting things that go on there, but obviously if you're retaining people, your need to continue to hire people is minimized. So that for us is really number one. I think equipment and leveraging equipment and understanding it is really important. We always encourage any contractor, look, if you can't come and to the national event, right, go to your local state and find out what some of these manufacturers are doing. If you understand how the equipment works, and the same would go for you, Will, for you guys in software. Right. We encourage people to get out there and understand how this stuff works, because that is really the key thing. But if, to boil it all back, it is about workforce and it is about retention. Those are really the keys that we see kind of evolving in and amongst our high performers in the membership.
And I'd love there to kind of segue into the membership because, I'm sure there are a lot of owners, not just in landscaping, but also in other industries that have never engaged the association, right? So I'd love just to understand, how you guys work. What does picking up the phone tomorrow actually look like and unlock for them, joining the NALP?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities. Obviously, the first part of our discussion, we focused in on some benchmarking data, right? That was absolutely key for the gentleman from Charlotte so he could better understand how he's performing. So I think that certainly is huge. Part of joining NALP means that we have two of our leading training programs that you get for free. So we have technician training that you'll get for free, as well as business manager training that you'll get for free. And obviously the technician training can go a long way, because now what you're going to do is help establish a baseline for the individuals who are coming on and being part of your crews, so that they really clearly, truly understand the best ways to perform when they're out there. And again, this is completely free. The business manager we find helpful because a lot of entrepreneurs may or may not have attended university, right? May or may not have even finished their high school degree. Business manager gives you that education so that you're not intimidated by the metrics that are necessary, right? And then, look, here's the last thing I would say about why you should be a part of an association. And specifically if you're in this landscaping industry, and it's about the networking. This, I mentioned to you before, I've worked with a lot of different industries over my time. This industry is the absolute best about sharing and helping each other, right? And I think that we go back to the fact that there's really still a tremendous amount of opportunity in the U.S. to grow your business. And ultimately, when you network and you talk to other people and they're willing to share, guess what's going to happen? You're going to improve your business. And so for us, it's frequently cited as one of the number one things that NALP offers, which is the ability to meet other contractors. And sometimes it's great to know contractors in your own neck of the woods, but sometimes it's nice to meet contractors in other states, because then there may be even less of a competitive kind of tension, if you will. So, again, I say all of this to say there's a lot of different reasons why we think contractors should join NALP. We encourage them to do so, and we think there's tremendous opportunity. And we just our goal is to make everybody better. That's all.
This may be a stupid question, right? And it may be like, what are the practicalities? So I pick up the phone and I talk to someone, I email someone, and then from there I'm in. Like, what does that look like? Is kind of the final.
Yeah,
question.
I mean, honestly, it's less than $1,000 to join NALP for a year, and so you can take advantage of everything we've got. But I would say this too. Here's the biggest problem I think people have with an association. If you're going to do it, if you're going to pay that money, challenge yourself to take advantage of all the opportunities that are there. A lot of people join, use one thing, and then forget about it. And what I would say is have an open mind, have a philosophy that you're going to utilize all these resources. And what we find is the members who are most successful in terms of getting the most out of NALP are those people who kind of almost have a plan for their membership. What do they want to do? at least once a month, they're going to access a different resource and they're going to take advantage of it. And when they do that, then they embrace the networking more. They become better performers because they better understand their business. It's just a growth acceleration. And then again, obviously, the opportunity to train your people is huge. And if you train your people, we always find that more training leads to better retention. And what did we talk about earlier, Will? What's the number one thing that shines out? Employee retention.
Hey, thank you so much, Brett. I really appreciate your time coming on, and it's been wonderful talking.